What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, I want to give a shout out to Joe for his donation to the channel via PayPal. I saw your donation, and I thank you, bro, for your contribution to this channel. I want to thank everybody that contributes to this channel. And if you want to contribute to this channel, you can do so via the PayPal or the Cash App. And also, I want to thank everybody that has signed up to the Patreon. I've noticed I got like 4 new people that signed up to the Patreon within the last 24 hours. I want to thank all you guys that have signed up, and I want to thank all of the people that have been with me on the Patreon for, since last year. You know what I'm saying? And the main reason why I have the Patreon is because it's a format where people like me and others are able to express ourselves fully without the censorship and BS that we see on YouTube. All right. So I want to thank all you guys that support me over here and on the Patreon. So I want to continue with this point guards thing. All right. It's been a minute since I've done it. I've been sidelined with the elections and all that stuff, right? So I left off at Isaiah Thomas. At number 2, I have Oscar Robertson. And Oscar Robertson, his stock has failed over the past, I'd say, 15 to 20 years, which is unfortunate. But I think it's probably due to the fact that many of the people that watched him play are dead or old, no longer in the media, not active anyway. So you'll see that. We've seen that with other players that have played during his time period. To the point where you have a lot of young people today that do nothing but disrespect these guys, and it's just sickening. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you think of the fact that a lot of these guys probably don't even never dribble a basketball in their fucking lives, right? But here's the thing about Oscar Robertson. Before Oscar Robertson, point guards, basically their role was to run the offense. They were pass first. When need be, maybe score a bucket, or try to score a bucket. But they were usually not their team's best scorers. Usually in that situation, they were the 3rd or 4th option. Bob Cousy was better than most at scoring in the 50s at that position. But Oscar Robertson was something that the league had never seen before. First of all, he was 6'5". Before him, the tallest point guards were probably Bob Cousy, 6'1" or something, or maybe 6'2". 6'5". By comparison, Elgin Baylor was 6'5" and 225, and he was a small forward. Oscar, when he got in the league, was 6'5" and 210. Oscar, he had a quick first step, but he was also very strong. And this is what made him such a hard player to stop. Number one, he was a great scorer. Oscar was a master of the mid-range jumper. He had a pretty quick release. Oscar could post you up and shoot his turnaround fadeaway. That's another thing. A lot of people think Michael Jordan invented the turnaround fadeaway or the fall-away jumper. Not true. Oscar Robertson invented the fall-away jumper. Michael's probably was more aesthetically pleasing to watch, because of his jumping ability and athleticism. Oscar was not quite as athletic as Mike, but then again, few people were. He didn't jump as high, but he had the fall-away jumper. you know. But another thing that Oscar Robertson invented was the pump fake, which I'm pretty sure he used a lot of while shooting those thousands of mid-range jumpers he shot over his career. But he also could, like I said, he had a quick first step. He also could get to the basket. You know, he had a knack for getting to the foul line. As a matter of fact, when he retired in 1974, he was the all-time leader in free throws made. Now, not attempted, that was Wilt, but free throws made. And he shot them at, I think, 84 to 85% clip. So he was a great foul shooter. So this is a guy that could go, that could get to the hole, could post you up, had the mid range. Now, there was no 3-point line at that time, but generally speaking, he probably would have been, if there was a 3-point line, a decent 3-point shooter, not the greatest, but decent. You know, he might have been maybe like mm, well shit, maybe like Jordan, you know. Decent, but not great from outside. Speaking of Jordan, Oscar Robertson was very critical of Michael. He's always been pretty critical of him. It's not necessarily him, just the notion that he's the GOAT. Because when you listen to Oscar um, talk, he questions whether or not Jordan made his teammates around him better. And he also doesn't believe, for instance, honestly, I don't think that he believes Michael's better than him. And also, I think that he believes that the best player of all time is somebody more like Wilt Chamberlain or maybe Kareem. Like, he just doesn't think that Michael's the best. I remember reading a story, right? I think it was from Mike's rookie year. So this is maybe 84, 85, somewhere around that time, right? And I can't remember whether this was a game maybe at Chicago Stadium or maybe, I'm going to say, let's just say for the sake of argument, this is a game at Chicago Stadium, okay? And for whatever reason, I know it's a true story, I just can't remember where they were. But for whatever reason, Oscar Robertson and Bill Bradley, that played with the Knicks, by that time I think he was a senator in New Jersey. They're watching Mike play. And Bill Bradley says, damn, this guy, Michael's incredible. And Oscar says, yeah, he's great. He's great. But does he make the players around him better? And that's one of the things that Oscar, you can't question, that he did that. He made the players around him better. When he was playing with Cincinnati, Oscar Robertson did not have the best teammates. The two best teammates he probably had were Jack Twyman earlier on, and then Jerry Lucas. His teams were pretty mediocre. If they did make the playoffs, usually they were ousted in the first round, maybe the second round, right? But you could never question Oscar Robertson's individual brilliant play. Oscar Robertson was hardened by poverty and racism. He was born in Tennessee in 1938. So, you know, think about it. Tennessee, 1938. When he was a small child, his family moved to Indiana in the 40s, Klan country. So you know Oscar grew up in nothing but poverty, probably encountered some form of racism every day of his life, probably multiple times a day. When he went to high school, he encountered a lot of racism, even though he was a star player in high school. And I believe reading in his junior and senior year, his teams won state championships. Even though, back then it was segregation. It was segregated. His school was all black. Probably going against maybe at sometimes an all white school, and you're beating them. So you know there's some BS going on after that. Whatever. After high school, Oscar Robertson went to the University of Cincinnati, where he went on to average a ridiculous 33.5 points per game, one of the highest scoring averages in collegiate history. I think at the time it was the highest until Pete Maravich blew that away maybe 10 years later. Um, but after college, Oscar Robertson, before he was drafted, he played on one of the greatest Olympic teams of all time. It was definitely the greatest amateur Olympic team of all time. And have Oscar and Jerry tell you, their team could rival the '92 Dream Team. That team had Oscar Robertson, Jerry West, Walt Bellamy, uh, Jerry Lucas, and many others. And during that tournament in the Olympics, they averaged their margin of victory. I mean, over their opponent was greater than 42 points a game, which is second only to the '92 Dream Team, who beat their opponents by an average of 45 points a game. But then Oscar Robertson was drafted by the Cincinnati Royals in 1960, and Robertson's rookie year, he averaged 30.5 points per game, which was it still remains, third highest scoring average for a rookie ever, behind only Will Chamberlain's 37.6 and 59.60, and Walt Bellamy's 31.6 and 61.62. All right. Um, Oscar Robertson for his career averaged 25.7 points per game. All right. And, but the first, I'd say 7 or 8 years of Oscar's career, he was a phenomenal scorer. He was the team's primary scoring threat. And he did so much for that club. Because look, not only was he the number one option on offense, he was also a tremendous rebounder. I mean, think about it. He was playing point guard, but he was averaging over 10 rebounds a game at that time. In fact, until Russell Westbrook did it in 2016-17, then did it 3 years in a row, Oscar Robertson was the only guard to average 10 rebounds a game in a season. Guard, that means shooting and point guard. Now look, I love Russ, but Russ was probably stat padding sometime to get him. But then at the same time, you know, Russ just made it look easy. So I'm not gonna knock him on that either. And Russ could have padded his numbers even more than that if you watched him play, because he was getting those triple doubles easy. He had perfected the art of getting those triple doubles in 2.5, 3 quarters. But anyway, 1961-62, Oscar Robertson. That was a magical season. You know what I'm saying? When I say magical, of course, Wilt averaged 50 and 25 that year, but yet somehow didn't win the league MVP. Elgin Baylor, even though he only played 48 games due to military service, Army service, excuse me, he averaged an incredible 38.3 points per game. But that's also the same season that Oscar Robertson averaged a triple double. Okay, something that honestly I thought would never be accomplished again. But then Russell does it 55 years later. But the amazing thing about Oscar's career is that, if I'm not mistaken, if you go through the first 6 years of his career, he averages a triple double. He averages better than 30 points. He averages better than 10 rebounds. And he averages better than 10 assists per game. And what makes that so incredible with the assists is that back then, assists were awarded more stringently. Back then, you couldn't have any extra moves between the pass and the bucket. Like nowadays, you know, James Harden or LeBron James could pass to, let's say LeBron passes to Kyle Kuzma. Kuzma's striding to the basket. He dribbles, comes back up with it, lays it in. That's considered an assist. Back then, because he dribbled, it's not an assist. As a matter of fact, you could trace the e you could trace how they were making it easier to register an assist all the way back into the late 80s, early 90s. It started becoming more and more lax as to what registers an assist. You know what I'm saying? But it was much more difficult back then. But yet, still, Oscar Robertson, when he retired in 1974, was the all-time leader in assists, and he would remain so for another 17 years until Magic Johnson passed him. And he was second in scoring, behind only Will Chamberlain when he retired. And he was the all-time leader in free throws made when he retired, until he was passed, I believe, by Moses Malone. But Oscar Robertson was not only a great basketball player, but he was a very intelligent man and very conscious man, and he spoke out against racism um, at a time where many prominent black athletes were doing that. Um, you know, and he was a bit of an activist. You know, maybe not quite as much of an activist as Bill Russell or Kareem, but he was an activist, and he was a very charitable man. But by the late 1960s, there were some tensions between him and the Cincinnati Royals management. Okay, Oscar Robertson, I believe, wanted more money. He was tired of being on teams that were losing. And back then, look, let's be honest. If you're a black man and you're relatively wealthy and you're complaining about something, white people will see you as being indignant and uppity and ungrateful. You know, and apparently Bob Cousy didn't help. He was the head coach of the Cincinnati Royals. Bob Cousy, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but Bob Cousy apparently was jealous of Oscar Robertson because he knew Oscar Robertson was better than he was. Okay, so whatever happened between those two, it happened, and that led to Oscar Robertson being traded for essentially nothing. But it turned to be a blessing for Oscar Robertson. But one of the most important things that Oscar Robertson did was, at that time, Oscar Robertson, and this is probably the most important thing he ever did, and he doesn't get a lot of credit for this. And this is why Oscar Robertson should rank higher on people's lists than they have him. Oscar Robertson, at the time, was the president of the Players Union, and he filed suit against the National Basketball Association. And that was because at the time, players really didn't have any rights. Even when your contract was up, you didn't have free agent rights back then. You didn't have any rights really to talk to another team, listen to contract offers. That stuff didn't exist. Basically, you were almost kind of owned by a team. The only way you really got traded is if the team wanted to trade you, and you really didn't have any say so. Oscar Robertson took those motherfuckers to court. And ultimately, what we saw was a beginning of players having more freedom as far as being able to talk to different teams, and also more fairness as far as money is concerned. Um, that's why you saw, if you listen to me do videos, I'll tell you that by the mid 70s, they were making a lot more money. Partially that's because of, you know, the league becoming a little bit more successful, but also because of people like Oscar Robertson. You know what I'm saying? Whereas the players were getting better deals as far as revenue sharing and whatnot, right? So that's something that Oscar Robertson did, right? But when Oscar Robertson went to Milwaukee, we all know what happened. They had that magical season where they won 66 games, which is still the franchise record. They had a then 20-game winning streak, which was the record at the time. And they went on to sweep the Washington Bullets, because at the time Milwaukee was in the Western Conference. They went on to sweep the um, actually, I don't think they were Washington. I think they might have still been Baltimore. Let's just say they went on to sweep the Bullets in the finals and won the championship. It was one of the most dominant campaigns of all time. I think they only lost 2 playoff games. All right, and Oscar Robertson won that award that had been lacking in his resume, which is a championship. Oscar Robertson was going to play 3 more years before retiring at the end of the 1973-1974 season. But when you speak of Oscar Robertson, you look at his resume and it's amazing. All right. And I want to read about his resume right now. In 1963-1964, Oscar Robertson won the league MVP. He was the only player to win an MVP during that era sandwiched between Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell. All right. And the only other guy that won an MVP during the 1960s was Wes Unseld, who won it in 68, 69. All right. Um, Oscar Robertson was a 3-time All Star Game MVP, a 12-time NBA All Star, 9-time All NBA First Team, 2-time All NBA Second Team. He was the 1960-61 NBA Rookie of the Year. 6 times he led the NBA in assists. His number 14 is retired by the Sacramento Kings. Of course, they became the Kings. His number 1 is retired by the Milwaukee Bucks. He was on the NBA 35th anniversary team and the NBA 50th anniversary team. Um, I don't normally name college awards too much, but he was twice the Helms College Player of the Year, 3 times UPI College Player of the Year, 2 times USBWA College Player of the Year, 3 times Sporting News College Player of the Year, 3 times Consensus First Team All American, 3 time NCAA Season Scoring Leader, 3 times First Team All MVC. His number 12 retired by the Cincinnati Bearcats, and he was named Mr. Basketball USA in 1956. He had career averages of 25.7 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game, and 9.5 assists per game. He is in the Basketball Hall of Fame as a player, and he is in the College Basketball Hall of Fame. And he won Olympic gold in Rome, Italy in 1960. That was the same Olympics that featured an 18-year-old Cassius Clay. Um, there's one thing I want to mention about Oscar Robertson that um, is very true, right? Now, look, a lot of times we'll say that the only player to lead the league in scoring and passing in the same season was Nate Archibald, right? 1972, 73 season, right? However, technically, Oscar Robertson did do that, but he doesn't get credited for it. and I'll tell you why. Um, one year, one season. I think it's the 1967-68 season. Oscar Robertson averaged, I think it was 29.6 points per game or something like that. Okay. And I can't remember how many assists he averaged, but it it led the league on a per game basis, right? So he technically led the league in scoring average and assist average. The problem is Oscar only played in something like 60, 65 games that year, right? And prior to 1969, 1970, the way the NBA did things is when for you to win the scoring title or win the assist title, you had to, they went by the amount of points you scored, the amount of assists that you had. That's why the year prior, Wilt Chamberlain led the NBA in assists with 702, even though he didn't lead it in average. Probably might have been Oscar or somebody, right? But he didn't get the assist title. Now in 67, 68, they gave the scoring title to Dave Bing because he scored more points than Oscar Robertson, but he didn't average more. He averaged something like 27 or so points a game, which was more than 2 points fewer than Oscar Robertson. But because he scored more points, they gave the scoring title to Oscar Robertson. Now I can't remember who led the league in assists that year. I don't think Wilt did it. I don't think Wilt did it again. I'm trying to see if they talk about it. Trying to see if they mention it. Yeah, here it is. They mention it more in detail. In 1967-68, Robertson also became the first of only two players in NBA history to lead the league in both scoring average and assists per game in the same season, also achieved, of course, by Nate Archibald. The official scoring and assist titles went to other players that season, however, because the NBA based the titles on points and assist totals, not averages prior to the 1969-70 season. Robertson did, however, win a total of 6 NBA assist titles during his career. For his career, Robertson shot a career uh, average of 48.5% from the floor and led the league in free throw percentage twice in 1963, 64, and 67, 68. Um, Oscar Robertson, of course, is also known for being the all-time leader in official triple doubles with 181. Although I've said this before countless times on this channel, the unofficial leader in triple doubles more than likely is Wilt Chamberlain, and it's probably not even close. When Wilt played, they didn't count blocks, and there were seasons where Wilt might have averaged somewhere around 8 to 10 blocks, if they were counted. So if you count that, plus if you look at that year when he was averaging, something like 24 points, um, 23 rebounds, probably somewhere around 8 to 10 blocks, and 6 to 8 assists per game. It stands to reason that during that time period, he probably racked up an unbelievable amount of triple doubles, coupled with the fact that throughout his career with points, rebounds, and blocks, he probably has somewhere between 400 to 500 triple doubles in his career. If they were to do the research, they could prove it, but they can't. So therefore, Oscar Robertson is the official leader with 181. All right. I'm gonna tell you something though. What Russ probably going back to a role similar to what he had before at OKC, if another team lands him. Those days might be numbered with Oscar Robertson leading in assists. Because I think Russ, this is the thing, this is what I think about Russ. I think Russ is like this. If he can't win a title, he wants to be known as Mr. Triple Double. And that's my thing on that. But tell me what you guys think.